Welcome back. Hi, Katie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back.
So this is my weekly, I interview people, but typically I work with Katie these days and we do interviews, we do discussions, creating consciousness around topics, wellness. And, my program is specifically tailored to help women over 35. And today we wanted to talk about something like a more taboo topic, where we kind of live our lives according to certain rules that are set up for ourselves, thinking as long as I stay in line, like I'll be fine, I'll be safe, nothing will happen. And then life just has other plans, right? And how we've all kind of been there and how disjointing it can be to have a paradigm just completely demolished and how that can be incredibly traumatizing for a lot of people. Like we don't all have like the wherewithal to navigate those kind of paradigm shifts. And a lot of us just get stuck in trauma as a result of it. You go, you live your life, you're like, I did what I was supposed to do. Whether you were born in an intellectual kind of setting where higher education was valued and it was like, as long as you make a certain amount of money or you go to college, you'll make a certain amount of money, only to find out like you're not able to get a job or something, or you're raised really religiously and you're like, well, as long as I just follow the protocol of the church, I'll be fine, only to end up with a really horrific spouse who's totally cheating on you, or a child who's rebelling against you, to even just like spiritual beliefs. I know I personally made it my mission to understand the rules of life as well as I could to try to avoid pain. It did not work. So, I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to, even if we're not putting a name or a label to it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And especially coming from a research background, like literally the definition of my job was to follow a protocol for an experiment. And even with that, even literally having words to paper and you're following that protocol and you're doing absolutely everything that you're supposed to be doing, 90% of the time, it didn't work. It just, and then you have to kind of go back. That was the hardest part about starting to do research, was not getting frustrated and just kind of going back and being like, okay, well, where did it go wrong? And let's find where it went wrong and see if we can correct that and then repeat the experiment. And it's difficult. And unfortunately with life, even though you think you have a protocol you're following, without a doubt, 99.999% of the time, it's not going to turn out the way it was in your mind supposed to turn out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for myself, a lot of that was shattered for me around 30, and then it just progressed. And I had to take on a deeper understanding of like the yogic principles, right? Or universal laws. And one of those was just the more you cling to an idea,
Yeah.
the more prone you are to that becoming your undoing, right? So it's like you're adamant that this is the way it is. And the more you cling to that, the more you're setting yourself up to be a target, basically.
Mhm.
And there's a principle like in yoga, aparigraha, and it's essentially like the way I would explain it is like you want to keep your palms open. You just want to have like an open palm towards life. Like you don't want to hold or clutch too tightly because things fall out of your hands when you do that. You want to have them open, and then whatever's meant to be there at a certain time will come in, and whatever's meant to leave will leave. But you don't want to cling too tightly because that's where the pain comes in. And that awareness has really helped me tremendously, but I can't say that I wasn't without my own, avalanches. Right.
Avalanche.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, growing up Mormon, I just know tons and tons of people who really and truly believed with their whole heart that, like, if they just followed the gospel and followed the church protocol, that they would only be blessed and that they wouldn't have certain things creep into their
Hmm.
personal lives, their families, only to end up with homosexual children, um, being like major adultery, um, illegal activities, um, business wise, and one spouse or something. Uh, like my niece, I remember when my brother died, and she was only like 18 or 19 at the time, and she said, "Oh, like it's not yours to grieve. He's in a better place now." And I was like, "You know what, lady? Like, I don't need your Pollyanna attitude." And she just vomited church shit on me. She got married at 21 to a porn addict. It was annulled 4 months later, and she was pregnant and became a single mom. She got remarried a couple years later to a guy who has serially cheated on her with over 50 women and has been verbally and physically abusive. And you would think that that would be like there was a little bit of her having to challenge her own testimony and her own beliefs in the church, because it's like, well, I did everything right and this is what ended up happening.
Hmm.
Except what we do and who we are, not necessarily the same thing. And if it's time to learn or unlearn or, have that blind spot revealed, it doesn't matter what rules you're following, they're going to show up in your reality, right?
Yes, absolutely.
My sister, ironically, I think has been the one who her mother has struggled more with her testimony because of watching her daughter, and my sister did do it right. And she married right. And she got all of these things. And she has the great everything. And then you have a child that ends up making decisions that are not even bad decisions necessarily, but the consequences of those decisions were
Yeah.
rogue in nature. And, like I remember my sister just being so humiliated that the entire community knew about their dirty laundry. And it was just like, I don't know, we think that if we follow a certain set of
Mhm.
rules,
Yep,
we'll be fine, right?
absolutely. It's like I thought, okay, go to college, go to medical school, do medical research, all of these things, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm 42, living at home, divorced. You know what I mean? And you're just like, and there's two ways to look at it, right? Of like, wow, I'm so fortunate to be able to have this safety net right now. And, there's that half glass half full. But then there's the half empty part of me that's like, but I thought I did everything right. And like individually, it was all the things I wanted. I wanted to live in New York City, wanted to get my MD, worked at Sloan Kettering, got married. It's like all those things individually, it was like, it was supposed to, the totality of it was supposed to be this like, not perfect life, but like everything I wanted. And I did get everything I wanted. And now it's like been flipped upside down, like completely upside down, living literally across the country,
Mhm.
divorced, you know, starting a new career. It's like you don't think 20 years back and envision that this is where you're going to be. And I'm pretty sure every person can have, or at least has had that moment, if not currently having that feeling of like, wow, my life is totally not what I thought it was going to be. And I don't have a bad life. I'm not, looking at it from a negative lens. It's just, oh, wow, you have no control. You have no control. You can do everything that you're supposed to do, and you don't have that end result in the sense of being this perfect, happy life. But I don't regret any of it. You know what I mean? I'm happy I did all of those things. It's just, you think the end result is supposed to be one thing, and it really always ends up being something completely different.
Mhm. Right. I mean, I feel as though, and this is again why I really love looking to astrology, because astrology, when an aspect is made in real time, like let's say Neptune is going to hit your sun or something, if we're operating from a very conscious place of like, okay, what am I supposed to understand? What am I supposed to learn? Then the events show up as like just a shift in your brain, like a paradigm shift.
Mhm.
But if you're clinging to old ideas and you just think you know it all and like you're not vulnerable, like that happens to other people, not me.
Yeah.
Like if you got these kind of attitudes, then like the shift or the event shows up as an actual material event, job loss, marriage issues, and it's not happening to be like, oh yeah, see, haha, we got you. It's really just to wake up that part of your consciousness that was asleep. Because even as a coach, I find constantly dealing with clients, they're like, what do I just need to do so I can go back to sleep consciously? Like, is there just something I can just do one time or two times and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's just set and I can just go back to being asleep?
No,
No, life is going to constantly challenge you to be more awake.
exactly. And the more you try to fight that or prove it wrong, you're just going to be stuck in that loop. And you just have to just be open and say, I'm going to do. That's where like the positive mindset comes in, right? Of like, I can only control what I can control and do what makes me happy, what I feel is the right thing. And then however the chips fall, it's like that's just life. And you have to be open to that. And it's like Murphy's Law, right? Of like, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong type mindset. But it's like just anticipate like something's not going to go right. But just because you think it's not right doesn't mean that it's not overall the right thing to happen to you. And you just have to play the cards you're dealt. That's really what it comes down to. And I was listening to my audiobook the other day of Mel Robbins' Let Them. And she's like, life's unfair. Accept it. These are the cards you're dealt, and it's not about playing against somebody else. It's playing your cards. What you've been given, you make it work. Stop focusing on what everybody else has, how things went right for them. They're prettier, they're smarter, they're this, that, the other. It's like just focus on the gifts that you were given and maximize those. And that's all you can do.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are so caught up in appearances, they want it to look like, look, I did everything right.
And
But
they say the more people like within everything comes back to like an example of Instagram, right? Of like the more people try to portray a perfect life, the bigger the cracks are.
oh, 100%.
And it's so true. It's so true because you think everybody has this perfect life. And then all of a sudden the next day you hear they're getting a divorce and you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? Because people try to portray this perfect life. And to me, it's just an easier life to live being honest about the reality of my situation, the reality of the world. It's like just be accepting of others and of yourself.
Yeah, because when you're trying to hold up an image, you're literally having to hold up that image. It's like, I don't want to hold that up. That's exhausting,
Exhausting.
you
I'm,
know?
I'm tired of being tired. Like,
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, people, they cling so tightly to appearances, images, ideals. When my brother died, I remember because my mom's not Mormon, but she's very hardcore Christian, and she had this idea that like, oh, if you die of a suicide or you die of an overdose, like these things were going to automatically send you to hell.
yeah,
It was like, well, do you still agree with that, knowing that you lost your son to an overdose? Like, or do you want to maybe like put some grace around that belief? Like,
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's the thing, like this clinging. When I was a yoga teacher, I would find that a lot where people want so desperately. What are the rules? Just tell me the rules so I can follow the rules so I can stay
Yeah.
safe.
And it backfires. Or if you, the harder you push something and force it, you're just creating that energy for it to push back on you. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
so hard because I felt that way for so long of I was really good at, give me the directions and I will do it and I will do it well. And I will check that list off and I will feel great. And then just the older you get, the more you realize, oh gosh, just
Well, it's just funny because you're like, first of all, those rules didn't work. But secondly, do any rules work? And thirdly, you know, and you can usually tell, like, for example, I was on TikTok and this girl, she's like, I'm 32. My partner and I have decided we're going to be child free. We're not going to have kids. She goes, but part of me is concerned that when I get older, I'm going to have regrets. And I commented and I said, I was like, you most likely will have a midlife freak out, but you'll get over it and you'll move on. You're like, you'll be fine. And she goes, I really appreciate you being like that kind of honest with me.
yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat and be like, oh no, you made your decision, you're fine. Life is
You're gonna
kind
have moments. Yeah, you're gonna have, but that's everything. And then you could have a child and then afterwards be like, oh God, what did I
of,
do?
and that's the thing. And a lot of women were commenting, like, no, that doesn't happen to everybody. And I was like, yeah, tell me you haven't hit, 40 without telling me. Like, tell me, and it's not so much the regret of not having kids. It's that midlife pivot is, did it work? It doesn't matter what choices you made.
Yeah,
You're questioning your choices, period.
yeah,
And I would hear people in the comments like just think that their virtue is somehow going to get them out of like some of these like hardcore karmic shit that we go through that everybody goes through. It's like, and this one girl was like, that didn't happen to me. And I was like, uh-huh. And she goes, why are you being so negative? Da, da, da. She kept like, and I was like, uh-huh. I just kept saying, uh-huh. And then she just blocked me. Like, I think she was just yeah, why are you commenting then?
it's like the intention behind your comment is like you don't want somebody to feel number one alone. It's like this person's clearly being honest about how they feel, and you're not doing anybody any kind of service by lying to them or sugarcoating it. You can say it, you're not saying it in a mean way, you're saying it in an honest way of like, listen, either way, you're going to have some sort of regret or look back on it, self-reflect, and wonder if you made the right decision. Everything you do in life, you wonder if you made the right decision, but that's kind of the point of life. You just have to make the decision and live with it and keep going.
Well, this one lady was like, I'm 47 and I didn't have anything like that. I'd had no regrets about not having kids, blah, blah, blah. And again, I said, maybe, I guess you missed my words. I said, most likely, I didn't say everyone blanket will. I said, you most likely.
We'll
But
have
again,
moments.
the midlife points, they challenge, it's like when you're reflecting on just work, like did just period, like if you're trying to build a building and you're like pausing to go, okay, is it stable, is it solid, do we need to fix this, like that's what midlife is. It's just this point, this corner that you turn in life where you're like, all right, well, I'm halfway to dead, do I want to change it up or is it working, do I like
Yeah,
it, like that's what that's about. It has nothing to do with like right or wrong.
100%. And you should be questioning yourself in a positive sense, right? Of like, okay, did that work? What can we do differently? Like, let's make the most of our time. Like, questioning yourself means, I think, you're doing the right thing by being self-reflective, seeing what works, what doesn't work. I think people who don't question themselves or their actions, then they're just on autopilot. And what are you really getting out of life then?
Mhm. Yeah, when my brother passed away, it did create an avalanche for me. And I remember thinking, it doesn't matter how much you save, how much you build, how hard you try. If life wants to take you down, it will. It doesn't matter. Our job is not to guard against events. that could cripple us. Our job is to prepare to navigate through them, you know?
Because every day will present new challenges. And the more you anticipate that, the more you will give yourself the tools to deal with it. Anticipate tough times, anticipate grieving, anticipate all that, and let yourself, but also move through it. Don't stay stuck in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really unnerving, I would think, like, because I didn't come from a religious space. I wasn't clinging to the church when I was adulting. I was just like, that wasn't for me. So that wasn't where my beliefs came from. But I can imagine if they were really ingrained from a religious perspective, you would struggle that much more. Like, I did what I was supposed to, and this is not how it is. And I do feel like most people end up in that boat. Like, literally, most people.
It's so hard when it comes to anything organized because you just fall back on, but I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was supposed to do. I followed the rules. I said my prayers. I did, XYZ. And that's
What happened with like the 2008 crash? If you were doing everything responsibly on your end to invest well and
Mhm.
create, build and all that, only to have the market tank. Imagine, I mean, I was a first-time home buyer. I thought I was doing everything right. I bought in 2007. Fast forward 3 years, my house was worth half. It's like it just there's so many things that are going to come at you that you just can't predict. COVID, are you kidding? Like COVID destroyed so much. I was talking to, Mikey, who I can't, do you know Mikey? Did I ask you if you know Mikey?
I think you asked me, and I don't believe I do.
Childhood friend of ours. But anyway, so, he was in the bail bonds business and I asked him like how business was going. I hadn't talked to him in a while and he said COVID destroyed it. It just absolutely annihilated. They weren't doing um bonds anymore. They were just citing people. And the bail bonds business never really recovered as a result. So like things just you would never predict. You could think you have the most efficient system in the world.
Mhm. The
And
safest job, the safe.
yeah. And there's no such thing. That's why I get really annoyed when parents are like, no, get a secure job. Who's to say it's secure?
Oh, nothing is secure. Nothing is guaranteed.
Like that's such an illusion to project onto a child. I know so many young girls, like their parents are like, go be a nurse. You'll always have a job.
And look at,
Sure.
but then it's like you look at the burnout rate of nurses and
Mhm.
all the stuff that they have to go through and put up with, especially during COVID, that a lot of them mentally couldn't recover afterwards because it was such a traumatic time. So there's just no guarantees.
Yeah, I would encourage people to take a more open palm mindset to their own lives and not feel like this black and white thinking of right or wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's like, is it working in this moment? If it's working, we continue. If it's not working,
Yeah,
we adapt. And it's not about like you doing something wrong. It worked during that era. It just isn't going to carry you forward, and that's okay. You adapt.
exactly. 100%. It's what, and also what works for one person isn't going to work for another person. And so that's where the comparison, people need to stop comparing lives and decisions and journeys because it's like, worry about you, focus on you.
When I think to the religious people in my life, because I know so many Mormons and their their clinginess to the church. And it's like the ones who fall out, you know, are the ones that Because the church will say, oh, just read your scriptures and you'll get the answers. The scriptures don't have the answers to everything. And so, people, they end up having these major fallouts because it's like, well, this is not explaining why my husband is cheating on me. This is not really working. This doesn't explain why the bishop is molesting girls. This does not explain, and so those who truly end up having to align on a deeper level with their own divine awareness, consciousness,
Mhm.
they're they're the ones who are ultimately going to be challenged harder.
Always,
I
always.
just I think of my aunt who just was so competitive and she was so judgmental of my mother. And I think of how she judged her, but I think she was just jealous because my mother had better looking kids than my aunt. But she just was always trying to, like, oh, our life is so perfect, our life is so squeaky clean, everything is so great in the church, blah, blah, blah. I mean, her grandson is homosexual now, and everyone knows it. And he came out like homosexual. And, he even decided, he's like, well, I'm going to get married anyway. I'm going to do right by the family. I'm going to take on a wife and to try to like repair some of that image. And her daughter, like this is the best part. So my cousin went rogue, like so rogue. Like I come from a very ultra conservative political family. I mean, we are just red, red, red. Okay. And my cousin like did everything minus becoming lesbian when she got divorced, was doing the gay parades, like dressing your kids up in rainbows, like, at BLM protests. And I joked, I was like, I'm not the black sheep of the family anymore. Like my cousin is, yes, you know what I mean? Like she's taken on that spot. Like I don't look so bad anymore. And like her sister, I adore. And I talk to her regularly. And I was like, so how is so and so doing? And she's like, I don't talk to her. Like she doesn't even talk to her own sister. Like, she's that different that she's no longer integrated into the family unit.
And
And
was it because it was more of a rebellion type thing, or was it just truly like her belief system, her
I
belief
think,
system?
and I think she talks to her, my cousin who I talk to, I don't want to say anyone's names publicly, but the cousin I do talk to, she said, it's like so and so talks to her parents, but I just don't talk to her. She's like, and neither do the other two sisters. So I don't know that it's a rebellion specifically as much as it's just a relatability thing at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think they relate to her. Like I don't know how to, but it's just funny because it's like, oh, you mean even, they aren't immune to life getting in there and throwing you a curveball.
It will. It always will.
'Cause I know my parents felt so ashamed losing their son to a heroin overdose, only to find out that like all of their peers who had kids were struggling with the same thing. So it's like all you have to do is just talk to your friends, only to find out that like you're all in the same boat, guys.
Yeah. And how sad though for your parents to even have a moment of feeling like apprehensive about talking about it or embarrassed or whatever they were feeling.
They were
It's like
clinging to an image.
everybody's struggle, every person has a struggle. It could be big, it could be small, it could be and it could to one person not identify as a struggle, but everybody has their thing, you know?
Boomers be like, oh no, nobody can find out that we're not perfect.
Isn't that the way?
It's like, please, please. Come on, like the jig is up. He went to Gorman, so that should tell you something right there. Like,
I mean, that place had a seedy underbelly.
yeah, right?
Mhm. The irony is like it was the only Catholic high school, and yet those kids are probably the worst.
Oh, absolutely. It's insanity. But I just think it's so important to convey to people because people do, they spend so much psychological, expend so much psychological energy on clinging in their brains to how they can control,
Mhm.
their own and like what kind of safety is that? Psychological safety, like that perception, like what are you trying to really keep safe?
I think it's the psychological aspect, you know, the perception that they do have control when you know you don't.
Well, it was like in the yoga community, and people would be so quick to be like, you practiced on a moon day? Like, there'd be so much crazy judgment. And I would think, there is no cookie in heaven. There's no one waiting for you at the golden gates of heaven, being like, you had followed the practice properly, and here's your reward. Like, get over yourself. Like, just it just blew my mind, and just the shame, and they're the shaming of other people, and it's like, yeah, people who need so badly to cling to parameters, and if you
Mhm.
dare live your life outside those parameters, they're like, dare you do that?
And the irony of groups who claim to be the most accepting
Oh,
are the least
oh, I know,
accepting.
like the yoga people. Like, what? You eat meat? Oh my gosh. Like, how dare you? Like that was one. Like, you're not a vegan. There was this was years ago I posted on Facebook and I had talked about this is after I got assaulted and learning to use firearms. And this girl from Europe just decided to tear me to shreds about like, you do this and you do this and how dare you do this and da 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 da. And I commented back and I said, you forgot to mention that I'm not a vegan.
Cherry on top.
You forgot to mention that I eat meat on top of everything else I do that's so horrible,
So horrible.
you know? And but those people are going to have their own rude awakening. It's
Yep.
like my former friend who I just really just don't enjoy her company. She was a very malignant codependent who just refused to actually have any sort of real intimacy or connection, but she'd try to like puppet string and create dependency instead. Like, I'm going to get you to need me because I can't be vulnerable enough to ask you to want me in your life. So I'm going to just create a dependency instead. And she was really just super obtuse. Like those that I am the exception. I am efficient. I do so much better than everyone else. I da 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 da. And I was like, in the end, I said, you're not as efficient as you think. You're just not on the receiving end of the sacrifice. Your husband, your daughter, me, like you're constantly sacrificing actually. Like I don't know why you think you're so efficient. You're not, and she just like prided herself on being so perfect and projected so much that like just to be around her required massive energetic grounding for me. That just got to be fatiguing.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, it's not a matter of if you get cancer with that attitude. It's a matter of when. You drink like a fish, you have no muscle mass, and all the women in your family are prone to cancer. It is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because you are not taking any conscious steps to deal with reality. And eventually that reality is going to force you to deal with it.
And what did she
Mom
say?
died of cancer at 50.
Oh,
Like everyone in her family dies of cancer. And I was just like, you're not like going to get a mammogram is not going to prevent you from getting cancer. Like with the way you're living your life and the attitude that you have that you're invincible, life is going to show you in a really hard, painful way at some point that you're not.
and it's always until it's too late that people recognize and try to make changes.
I mean, the thing is, the more you can adapt an attitude of I am vulnerable, the less vulnerable you actually become. The more you adapt to the concept of like, I'm not in control,
Yeah,
the more self-control you actually have because you're not clinging to manipulate everything.
exactly.
You're just focusing on the moment.
Focusing on the moment, acknowledging, internalizing, and then reacting.
Yeah. Like with, what the book you're reading, Mel Robbins, Let 'em. It's like
Let,
I can't focus on what other people are trying to say about me.
exactly.
For
It's, and
every person who hates me, someone's gonna like me. It is what it is.
yeah. And she even talked about that part too of like, you're not going to make everybody happy. So in trying to make everybody happy, you are making yourself
Miserable.
happy. So why would you give people that power? You know what I mean? It's like stop doing everything because it makes you look like the good daughter or it makes you a better friend, XYZ. It's like do these things because you want to do them for yourself. And in turn, the positivity comes and like it makes you become a better friend, a better daughter, better sister, whatever it is. But it was always like let them, but also let me. You know what I mean? Like you have an issue with something, okay, then that's I'm going to let you have that issue. But for me, I'm going to do this because that's what's good for me. But there's a way to do the let me without being, hurtful towards others. It's just being respecting yourself, creating boundaries, XYZ. It's like boundaries are a good thing. I don't know why people view them as so negative. Like, oh, you have a boundary that puts pressure on me and makes me feel like I'm the bad person. And it's like, no, I'm just protecting me. It's nothing against anybody else.
Yeah, I had a girl tell me years ago, she's like, I feel like I have to walk around eggshells with you. And I was like, why? Like, I no one asked you to. Say what you want. You can, and you'll deal with the repercussions of it. Do what you want. You'll deal with the repercussions of it. I'm not trying to micromanage your life.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if I don't like what you do, I'm gonna make it clear. Like this girl, she was notorious for making plans with me, and then she would cancel literally as I was walking out the door. She must have done that 10 times to me, and I finally just ripped her a new one. I was like, I'm not making plans with you anymore because you don't have the courtesy to give me an adequate amount of cancellation time. And now I can't do anything with that time because it was already set up for you. And then she was just like, well, I always feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you. And I go, when you pull the shit, like, I don't know what you expect. Like,
It's courtesy, it's respect. And that's showing a lack of respect when somebody continuously cancels on somebody. It's it is a sign of disrespect.
Sabrina had said the same thing to me about, like, oh, I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you. Um, and I thought that's interesting because I didn't actually want you to come back into my life. You insisted on me being here.
Well, I think it's interesting. It says more about somebody saying, I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you because I feel like with you, I know exactly where I stand with you. Do you know what I mean? And to me, that's actually a good thing and a refreshing thing. And I know exactly where we are instead of like walking on eggshells would be with somebody who wouldn't tell you when they're annoyed with you, that wouldn't be honest with you, that you would always feel like, I don't know where I stand with them. But when you have a boundary with somebody or your boundaries are clear to everybody around you, that to me that shows like I know exactly where I stand with you at all times.
Yeah, and I embrace honesty. I really prefer it. If someone doesn't want me in their life, please tell me. The last thing I want to do is bother you. You know what I mean? Like you're not doing me any favors by pretending.
The relationships in my life that I'm closest to and strongest are all women who are very vocal, honest. What you see is what you get. And I love that. To me, those are the easiest people to be around and have relationships with because you know where you stand and you can be honest with them. It's not just viewing them as, oh, they're harsh and boundaries, whatever it is. It's like, oh no, because guess what? I get to be the exact same way with them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would want somebody to tell me and be honest with me, and I should be able to feel like I can tell somebody something and be honest with them without there being, that coldness in the air over it. It's like, no, let's talk about it. because I wouldn't want somebody to be talking to me and sitting there thinking the entire time of like, oh, I have to be careful about what I say and I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't say that. It's like, no, be you. And it's up to me if I want to accept that or not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And vice versa. So I think those are the healthiest relationships.
Yeah, it was funny. So one of my other friends, she's been notoriously codependent her whole life, and I'm always the one trying to teach people to use their voice, have boundaries, be more assertive, all that. Like I'm always that teacher with my friends. And then one time I asked her, I was like, "Hey, so do you da 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 da?" Like I asked her if she was interested in something, and she goes, "Bitch, I don't got time for that." And I paused and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Thank you." Like I can't even be mad at you. That was so awesome that you so like no.
Like, how could you be mad at somebody for being honest and respecting, what time they have and what boundary they're protecting, whatever it is? It's like, but I wish people would understand. Somebody can't get mad at you for saying no. It's what you think, feel, want, need. Like, how can somebody get upset at you? I mean, somebody could get upset at your delivery, maybe, of whatever is happening in the conversation, but like that's somebody's want and wish, and you have to respect that.
Well, ironically, so people think that narcissists are the only ones who are obsessed with control. Codependents are too, but in a different way, I guess. So like a
Yeah.
narcissist they just want to like squeeze every ounce of you out of you just for their own benefit. Like they
Mhm.
just are trying to control you because they need you to reflect their narrative. Codependents are controlling in the sense that like they want to gauge a certain response out of you so they can maintain their own safety, right? Like, and if a codependent doesn't know how to please you, then they feel like they fail to create that safety.
Yeah.
If you say to a codependent, no, that doesn't work for me, it totally compromises their own level of security in that moment because they're just trying to be safe.
Yeah.
So those responses are like, well, I don't know how to manipulate the situation so that I can feel unseen, unheard, and just safe. I feel way too exposed, way too called out. You know what I mean? And it's a survival mechanism that they've adopted. They haven't quite figured out how to like hack away at and like reintegrate a new patterning. But a
Mhm.
lot of it is just that. They're so used to the old survival tactics of trying to manipulate their circumstances. And so if they feel like they have to walk on eggshells, it's like, I don't know how to manipulate you to get my own needs met, is essentially what they're saying.
Yeah.
And like, well, you don't need to manipulate me to get your needs met. Like, you are safe here. I wouldn't be around you if I had an intent to hurt you. Like, it's just,
Yep.
but, but based on where they've been and how they create that safety, you're making it real tight, like real hard for them to be safe in that moment, but based on what they're used to.
Yeah. And it again always comes back to vulnerability too, right? Because it's like if you if you say no to somebody, it is being vulnerable and that they could say no back to you or that they don't accept something and you could potentially be hurt. But it's like, but that's part of like growing in a relationship, friendships, whatever it is, of like being vulnerable, taking the risk of upsetting the other person. And you have to respect yourself.
But even that codependent patterning is something that can be that I'm doing it the way I'm supposed to, that can end up backfiring later in life. In fact, my therapist told me years ago, she goes, between like 55 and 60, she goes, codependents wake up and they are just full of rage. Like, I can't believe I played it like this my whole life. They're so angry that they people please. They're so angry that they sacrifice themselves, their boundaries, their voice, all of that. Ironically, around 58, you have your second Saturn return. I think that's what kicks it off, actually, what does this to people.
Oh,
It's responsibility um, people end up having to take. But that can be part of that protocol too. Like it's not necessarily just like I grew up with strict religious beliefs or I grew up with spiritual beliefs or educational beliefs, and like that got shattered. It can be just your own survival mechanics not working anymore and being like, but I did what I was supposed to do. Because imagine if for a codependent, for example, you go over to their house, what can I get you? Nothing. No, really, what can I get you? Nothing. How about a drink? You want a drink? No, I'm fine. Do you want a snack? No, really, I'm fine. Like they're trying so hard to make it right so they can feel validated that they created that safety. And you're not letting them. And it's so hard for them, to like undo that. Like they feel like it's their obligation to set the stage because a codependent's motto is if you're okay, I'm okay. So they're going to be obsessed with making sure that you're in that homeostatic place so that
Yep.
they never have to feel vulnerable.
Yep. Hmm. And because it's a direct reflection of themselves. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Mm.
And I did everything that I was supposed to do. And then they have that feeling of like, I made them happy. And then that's their happiness is making other people happy. And it's so sad to see.
Well, like I said, I think it boils more down to just the safety. Like, okay, they're
Yep.
good, safe.
Hmm.
Because why else will we follow the rules in life unless we're trying to be safe?
It backfires.
And control is such an illusion on so many levels.
The perception.
And I used to say to Sabrina, I'm like, you spend more energy trying to control the people in your environment than just focusing on yourself. Like, just focus on
Mhm.
yourself. Like, who cares what the higher ups think? Who cares? You're so concerned with the narrative, but you'll never be able to control the way people think or perceive you ever. So why are you wasting so much energy on that? Like, she was in a lot of power struggles trying to maintain this illusion of control. That's why I'm like, life's gonna hit her hard at some point.
And then with some people like that, you just have to step away and
Well, the
can't
only
be
way to
around.
win a power struggle is to walk away, to let them think what they're gonna think and be like, bye, I'm out. That's the only way to win a power struggle is to withdraw.
100%.
That's why on that thread, when she kept saying, oh no, see, I didn't go through that. And I just wrote back, uh-huh, okay. Like I just kept writing back, like, and to the point where she just was mad. She'd go over mad. Well, yeah, like what you want to do is control my thinking. Good luck. Have a nice day.
And with my ex, if there was a disagreement, I would just kind of sit there and or walk away, literally. And he'd be like, You're so avoidant. You're so avoidant. And it's like, if that's how you want to perceive it, I'm in a no-win situation with you because you always have to be right. I don't think you're right. So why would I sit here and continue to prove a point that you will never accept? So what do? I walk away. Why would I continue to sit there and take somebody coming at you in every direction? It's like, if you want to consider it avoidant, that's fine. I'm just simply removing myself from the situation.
I had an ex like that, and I remember it was just so incredibly like challenging to have any intimacy with him because he wasn't capable. So I just never enjoyed it because it was just like there's just such a bad disconnect that I just
Yeah.
stopped. And I'll never forget. He goes, "Yeah, my girlfriend doesn't put out." Like he was the victim. And I just said, "No, she doesn't." You're right, she doesn't. And I just carried on. I was like, I'm not even like, yep, you're right. I'm not fighting you on this. Because I don't care. Like
But
you
not once, but not once thinking about, okay, if they're not putting out, why are they not putting out?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, what's my role in this?
No, no,
It,
that was not something that would ever enter his consciousness. So I was like, you're right, I'm not. I mean, I understand why men do not want to deal with me. I completely get it. Like the inability to manipulate me, it's not happening. And I came across a thread where he was saying women only want men who make more money. And I said, that's actually not true. I said, I've dated a bunch of men who were very uncomfortable with the fact that like I was successful and came from money. They didn't want to deal with that. And there was a lot of rebuttal, like, no, like you're crazy. They just didn't like you. And I was like, whatever. And then one guy said, he's like, yeah, well, it's just because we want to be needed. And I said, correction, you want someone dependent on you. Because if someone's dependent on you, you hold all the control and power and none of the responsibility. That's the difference.
That's, yep.
And if that's not the case, then you can't manipulate her. And that's what actually what you want. And if a woman wants you, you actually have to work for it. If she needs you, then it's like having a crutch.
Yeah.
And you can be as abusive as you want if she needs you. But
Ugh.
if it's about wanting, you better step up and make yourself valuable.
Yeah.
There's a difference. And I just find that men don't want to make themselves valuable. They just want us to be dependent on them. Like they're really struggling to break from that old paradigm.
I can't even imagine getting back out into the dating world. After my hiatus, I'm like, well, I can't even imagine what it's like out there.
Well, and ultimately, that particular situation happened to break you of some sort of spell. I mean, that's all these situations are doing is they're breaking us from a spell of illusion, this belief that we had that we thought would protect us, and it doesn't. And I get it, you know what I mean? Because when you get stuck in that trauma, it does create this like apathetic insulation. And you're just like, I just really don't care, you know? And that's like the defense mechanism. And I completely understand that. And yeah, because it's like it was just too much. You don't want to go through it again.
No, I don't.
Yeah, it took me a while to undo some of the to really pull apart like my belief systems after my brother died and that whole avalanche. I mean, my health, my finances, like anything that could be destroyed was. It was such a difficult time, and um, it forced me to shift a lot of my beliefs. Like law of attraction tells you that everything is in your power as long as you take responsibility. But that's not true. We live in a karmic reality. I'm not responsible for the weather. I'm not responsible for the economy. I'm not responsible for other countries. I'm not responsible for politicians. I'm not responsible for so many things. And so it was like when my brother died and it had this massive impact on my life, that's where I was like, wait a moment. This event happened and it impacted my life in a horrific way, and yet I didn't cause it. So I had to really reconcile and shift a lot of my own paradigms as a result of that. Because I was like, okay, so like there isn't this like direct correlation between like my beliefs and
Yeah.
my reality. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that was hard. And I spent a lot of years dissecting that. And it's even a part of my book, kind of extracting the differences between like what we're manifesting and creating versus the reality we're subject to. You know, we don't live a lot of law of attraction lives under the assumption that, or is based on the assumption that we live in like 4 or 5D. We don't.
No.
Universal law, gravity, a lot of these things, like it is what it is. I can't undo that. These are just basic universal laws. There's karmic laws. We live on the karmic plane. It's we can't override astrology as long as astrology is an aspect to our lives. Well, there's always going to be someone who's richer and someone who's poor. It is what it is.
It is what it is. And the only control you do have is even to an extent of how you react to it. That's the only thing you can control. Anticipate crap's going to happen and just be prepared to react in the best way you can. And that's all you can do. You cannot control the weather, other people, situations, work, nothing. You can only control how you react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely not like an antidote to life, is there?
There's not. I think the only antidote is knowing that there is no antidote.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's just a chronic path of management and
Mhm.
adapting. But yeah, people are so, oh gosh, people just want so badly to just put a paradigm in place and just let that just speak for itself and then just going, just they want to go back to being asleep.
Autopilot.
Yeah, they don't want to be present. They don't want to think in the moment. They don't want to adapt in the moment. They don't want to engage critical thinking. They don't want to have to go, okay, well, maybe, the diet that worked for 7 years isn't working anymore. Maybe that's the problem. Like whatever the situation may be, it's like it's time to adjust and adapt. And it's very difficult to teach that. People really do. They're like, well, if I just, like stand on my head for 5 minutes a day, will that absolve me of X, Y, and Z? No, it won't. You actually have to show up in every moment and be present.
Show up. Yep. Show up.
And that won't even absolve you of things. It'll just dissolve the intensity.
Yep. Manage.
Yeah,
We're all just trying to manage.
exactly. Exactly. Well, as usual, Katie, it was definitely a pleasure talking to you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, until next time, everybody. If there's something that anyone would like us to bring up, a topic that you want us to discuss in more depth, please feel free to comment and let us know.
Definitely.
I'm the longtime coach and, Ashtanga teacher, I'm an entrepreneur, and Katie's an MD, so we have a lot of expertise behind our belts.
Good team.